go. We
You
should
send me the link in the chat as well.
Yeah. All right, we are now live. Let's see how this goes. I'm just gonna give this a few, maybe like 30 seconds or something, just to see that everything is working. It would be great if people in the comments are just verifying if you can hear Morten or not.
Hello, hello. Can you hear me?
It's pretty fun now on YouTube. I can't watch our own stream without ads because I don't have an ad blocker. So looking at the chat is a problem.
Oh, there we go. Okay,
verifying if you can.
Our own stream popped up on my feed.
Perfect.
That's funny.
All right. So perfect. Yeah. If I'm gonna start this basically the moment people can confirm that you can hear Morten. So Morten, you just say something. Hey, first one says we can hear Morten. Perfect.
Oh,
All
perfect.
All right, awesome. So today's stream is going to be about sculpting. We are going to be, well, I'm going to be sculpting a character. Not sure exactly what. I have a few ideas. I have some reference. And I'm going to be using this here as my anatomy reference and a little bit of new mat cap here. And Morten is going to be taking your questions. We have a Black Friday sale ongoing at the moment that started today. So we have all our exclusive Flip Normals products. Flip Normals exclusives are 50% off, and then we have a lot of other tutorials as well, courses, 3D models, all that kind of stuff, also at heavy discounts. This is our biggest sale of the year, and the Black Friday sale is always the biggest sale. So yeah, definitely check out flipnormals.com for that. But we are just going to be sculpting now, just having fun with that.
I think my on my end, YouTube is broken because the stream is just black. I'm assuming people are actually seeing the stream, but mine is just completely broken.
Okay, let's hope that's the case. It looks to be fine on my end when I see it here.
I've been having issues in both Chrome and Firefox actually with the YouTube Studio. Like it's been really strange.
Oh, okay, well, that's annoying. Yeah, I'm in Firefox now as well.
Whoops. There's a thing in the background there. All right, there we go. Now I see the chat.
Perfect. Awesome. Yeah, all right. Yeah, so just whenever I'm sculpting like this, like I have some reference for some, like from some traditional sculptures that I think are really cool. Like definitely not some kind of goblin things, because that would have been too comfort zone for me. So so what I have some goblins. But what I'm doing is with sculpts like this, I always try to find like artistic reference, and then I try to find a reference like this, like anatomy reference as well, because people and characters and creatures and everything like that, we're all fundamentally the same under the hood. So just by having some really good reference like this is just a huge help for me.
What's the idea behind your split view?
The idea is that I have reference here now just to the left, so I can see this at the same time. So this is from the anatomy, the anatomy bust we have. Just I'm working on version 2 of this, so it has a lot more separation in there. So what I'm doing is I have it, I split it up in half. This is not available commercially yet, but it will at some point. And I just flip it. So if I'm working on like the fat pads and the main muscles, then I can see this. And if I'm working on the bones, I can just see this. The split view is so handy for this kind of stuff. Particularly if you're dealing with scans, then it's like the best thing ever. And for people who don't know where you can find it, transform and then split screen and set this to 1.
Quick question here. How much deep anatomy knowledge should I have should I know for stylized characters? Well, I mean, anatomy knowledge of sort of any kind is good for any type of sculpting, even if it's stylized, because it still follows the same type of rules. Where it differs with the stylized anatomy is that you're able to take what you know from traditional anatomy and stretch it, deform it, and sort of make it into a stylized version. So I would say it's just as critical as when you're doing something realistic. You might be able to get away with a few more things when you're sculpting something stylized, but it's still very crucial to know.
Yeah, particularly if you're dealing with like any kind of production. If you're working on a Disney show or anything like that, that's like kind of realistic, like the Pixar Disney character. They're not very far away from realism. They're not like rubber hose kind of things. So that means that their muscles would deform in a fairly natural way, at least. Again, not like in a rubber hose manner. So knowing anatomy there is just going to be massively beneficial. Then you're more like selective about what muscles you actually work with. But like all rigs are going to be based around the skeleton as well. I think it's really important to know anatomy if you're doing stylist.
Tosh is saying, I'm trying to move away from Maya. With your last podcast, you guys still had complaints about Blender. How do you feel about Cinema 4D these days? Well, I wouldn't call it complaints about Blender. It's more like we're just looking at the strengths and weaknesses of in production software versus something like Blender. And the point that we keep reiterating is that, take Maya as an example. Maya was forged in the fires of production, right? So a lot of the features and all of the pipeline integrations that studios have, they've done that with Maya in mind. So in order to use something like Blender, you would have to rewrite your entire pipeline, and that's the tricky part. So, Blender is also a very mature software. There are just things that it's missing because it hasn't been part of the traditional sort of hardcore VFX or games pipeline to the same extent. As for Cinema 4D, I can't really speak to it. I've never really used it much.
Yeah, Cinema 4D looks like a perfectly fine tool. Never used it. Whatever works, right? I don't think it's I think there might be a misunderstanding here because we don't really use tools based on how many complaints we have. If that was the case, I would never ever use ZBrush again. It's more like like ZBrush, for instance, is so incredibly strong in one specific thing. The UX is insane. It's an insane software in so many ways, but it's so strong in so many ways as well that like the complaints we have about it, they're legit complaints, but it's not like I'm gonna switch away from ZBrush just because there are some issues, because the software you're moving to is also gonna have tons of issues. If you're moving from Cinema to Blender or from Blender to Cinema, like just because you have issues with the software, you're also gonna have issues with the other software as well.
You know what? From from what I know, something like Cinema 4D is incredibly strong when it comes to motion graphics, for example. And they also have really good integration with a lot of popular render engines, which makes it a really strong 3D software. But aside from that, I don't really know that much about the software, to be honest.
I know it was really far ahead in texture painting back in the day. I was like 2009, 10. I was really trying to find good texture painting software. And not just Cinema itself was crazy strong, but it had body paint. And body paint was like way ahead. And then they integrated that into Cinema. And then they did nothing with it. And then there wasn't really a texturing software available for years. The fun little thing here for the anatomy model here, like on the left, the teeth are my teeth, because I was pretty thinking about talking about this before, but I went to the dentist about a year ago and got my teeth scanned, and now I use them for everything. So I just took the scan of my teeth and just chucked them into the anatomy model here. So pretty fun, pretty effective to just have
that's how you do teeth.
Yeah. At least it's scan-based, right? Because whenever you do anatomy, like you really want to be as scan-based as you can be. Scanned skull or scanned teeth or scanned muscle, because otherwise you're dealing with artistic interpretation, which is useful, of course, to have that. Like the other side of this, there's a lot of artistic interpretation to help along the sculpt, but you really just need some stuff to be, like you need everything to be based on the truth, and then you can interpret it. You just want to be careful with anatomy that it doesn't start with artistic interpretation, which I think is a huge issue with anatomy. That is just some dude in the 1800s who came up with some rules and everyone just went along with that without like questioning it, looking at x-rays or scans or MRIs or anything.
Saya wants to know what matcap you're using.
Yeah, this is one of the ones I found on ZBrush Central, I think like 12 years ago. I have no idea. It's called Z7. I have a bunch of these ones here. I just
Oh, I
actually,
remember those.
yeah, I have a bunch of them here. I just deleted like all the default ones just earlier today because I'm so annoyed with them. So there are a bunch of these ones here that I bought or got like 10, 12 years ago.
I used to use like one of the gray ones from that set collection. It had like a greenish, bluish hue, I think.
This one? Maybe you can
It's
see
been
it in
a
like
long time since I used those.
20
Yeah, maybe
seconds.
that one or something like that.
Yeah, there are some really good ones here. This one here
Yeah.
isn't like good in a sense because it hides so many things. So it hides a lot of details and such. So it's hard to see exactly what your model looks like, but it looks really good. Like it's visually pleasing. So I really like it, but it's yeah, there's a big difference between that and like being able to interrogate your model.
So aside from goblin vibes, what do you have in mind for the sculpt?
No, that's it.
Oh, okay. I thought we were gonna go deeper with some amazing backstory or something.
No, that's
He was hurt by his parents, and now he's taking revenge or something.
No, he's just this goblin. But you know, we can go with that. Very hurt by his parents.
Tormented in his teens. That's why he is the way he is now.
What I'm doing when it comes to sculpting like this is I'm just trying to get down on an anatomical base like this, where this is entirely generic. This here could turn into a beautiful woman or a orc or like a little child or anything like that, because there is like a core anatomy here. It's not beautiful in any way here, but it has like a lot of core anatomy, so you can really like use the move brush and put it into things. And this is how I work in a lot of ways. Just get down the core anatomy, and then from there you can really like turn it into anything. I find that if you rush this stage, if you rush particularly the bone stage, then you're just in trouble. Then it's so difficult to make the proportions work and such later on. So I'm like, when I'm sculpting for myself, I'm like really strict about this, because sometimes it looks like you're doing this kind of stuff just because it looks cool. But it's massively beneficial to properly spend time on like the core construction of it.
I have a question. Adding a triangle while retopoing for reducing edges, is that good? And that depends. I mean, triangles can be totally fine. It just depends on where it is, you know. So if we're talking about retopologizing a face, you might not want to put a triangle right in like a deformation zone, but you could easily hide them in the nostrils, in the eye sockets, inside the ears. It's just those are the things you have to keep in mind. I think triangles and weird kind of topology gets a bad rep sometimes because a lot of us have been taught that you have to have perfect topology, perfectly quad topology everywhere in order for things to be good, but it's very dependent on what you need your topology to do.
Yeah, I think this is so important. I think we should really make a video on YouTube about this, about like what is good topology. Like we've done something like this in the past, but just like properly reiterated that good topology is not visually pleasing topology. There is no such thing as like there might not be a connection at all between like what looks good in terms of topology and what's functional. In the same way that an engine that looks good under a car may not be a functional engine, or the best engine might not look good, right? It's just purely a technical tool for getting a job done.
I think my favorite example of that was I think Rich Hurry, he weighed in on that when the whole Pixar thing screenshot came out of Mrs. Incredible or whatever her name is.
Yeah.
And she had that odd looking sort of redirect of topology right in her like, you know, your the smiling deformation lines when you smile, and everyone was like, well, this looks like terrible topology, but he sort of weighed in on that it was crucial for them to be able to get that little wrinkle that some people have when they smile, and that's a perfect example of usable topology for like a type of topology that they needed for their use case, but you wouldn't typically think of that as good topology.
Yes.
You can find that example.
There's very little.
Might be a little abstract.
If you search for my name and Pixar topology and Twitter, you're probably gonna find it because I posted it out there and I got a few reactions there. So
there we go. Found it. This is the one. And the capitalist says, "Hey guys, I just wanted to thank you both for all your help and support for the 3D community. I'm a student of 3D and I really love your classes." Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's great to always hear, feedback of that kind, that what we're doing actually is helping people.
It's kind of difficult because we just kind of sit and work on flip normals, don't necessarily talk to a lot of the community, so it's really good to actually like hear that. I mean, we try to engage as much as we can, but within reason, right? Like building a company is difficult and building YouTube videos is difficult, so it's really cool to like genuinely hear that the videos make a difference for people. That's one of the reasons I enjoy the streams.
The CIA, which I'm assuming is the actual CIA, they have a question. How should I approach ice cream textures? Alphas onto the geo or displacement maps with maintaining high details, of course. Oh man, it's always like, I feel like whenever we do these streams, we could always start any answer with "it depends." And we've talked about this before. It really depends on what you need it for. Either will work just fine. Like if you need just a static thing, you just need something to render, you can totally use alphas, just bake it into your mesh and be done with it. If you need it for, a larger part of a production, displacement maps might be the way to go, because then you can do everything in the render. You don't have to have a crazy amount of polygons in your scene in order to render some like high fidelity ice cream texture.
I always kind of think about this with the example of bread, because bread, just making like a loaf of bread in 3D.
Oh boy.
Like that by itself isn't necessarily super difficult, right? But what if you want to cut the bread? Or if you want to like tear the bread, particularly if you want to like rip the bread apart? That's just insane. That's like beyond crazy. Even just like modeling bread is still difficult, but it's still like kind of doable. But ripping it is just a whole different thing. So even if you want to have a cut like loaf of bread and you just want to show like one half of it, that stuff is really difficult. So what's difficult in 3D might not be obvious. Like if you want to just show an ice cream, there might be plenty of ways of doing that. But what if you want to have some kind of like soft ice cream being like going into a cone or something? It's a whole different level of complexity. You probably need Houdini for that.
Someone's asking, I'm considering purchasing the perpetual license of ZBrush 2023. Do you guys think the features of 24 are worth going with the subscription plan? I mostly do hard surface sculpting. When we looked at it, it didn't really look like much was happening with the new version. Do you remember anything sort of spectacular about that?
I gotta say, I didn't think that was a very interesting version whatsoever. The annoying thing with the whole thing is that since it's not a backwards compatible software, it might not depend whether or not you want the features or not. Like we were still in 2022 here. We might just have to upgrade at some point here, because at some point we need to open files from 2023, 2024. It's already an issue in certain times when people have to export out OBJ files to me. So it's almost more of a case. Sometimes do you want to be able to open ZBrush files from people, and that's annoying. But in terms of the pure version, like it seemed like there was nothing interesting for me in that version whatsoever, as far as I can tell.
I'm also just wondering, like how much more can you throw into ZBrush with the platform it's built on, right? Like, one of the big things that the software could really use is some sort of proper way to handle textures that isn't just poly paint. but I don't know if the way that the software works would even allow for that.
Yeah, absolutely no idea.
Because I guess, what they've been doing for the past many years is that a lot of the newer tools come out as plugins that sort of run externally. They open in a pop-up window that isn't ZBrush, and then you have a full 3D viewport where you can do stuff outside of ZBrush, and almost like it re-imports it back into ZBrush when you're done. It just kind of seems like it's, well, it not doesn't kind of seem like it is built on a very, very old platform, and I guess rebuilding that would be maybe pointless right now.
I'm always thinking about the same when it comes to Photoshop as well and other software. I mean, like 3ds Studio Max and Maya and all that, they're absolutely ancient software. Like, I'm wondering what is like developed for that, because when you're probably dealing with legacy stuff from like maybe even late 80s in cases of Photoshop. I wonder if
Yeah.
if how much of the core of that is there, or if it's been like refactored multiple times, or like what you're dealing with there.
Yeah. I mean, with a software that old like Photoshop, surely it must have been rewritten or something
Yeah,
to make
maybe.
it functional.
Yeah.
Or it's just hacks upon hacks upon hacks.
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering, if like tools like that, or like even ZBrush, which is, I mean, it's from the 90s, like
Yeah.
how much of that is, like, how difficult it is to build things like in it today.
To retopologize a highly detailed sculpture, which way would you recommend? The remesh inside ZBrush or bring the model to Maya for manual retopo? Well, oh my God, it depends. So if you need something quick and dirty, ZBrush might be the way to go. Even, I mean, sometimes it even works for final stuff, right? If you need something proper that needs to be animated, needs to deform, needs to work in production, you probably want to do it manually. You could do it in Maya. You could do it with uh, Henning just did a video on RetopFlow, for example. You could watch that and
Oh,
figure out how that software works, because that's really efficient for doing
Topology.
retopology, especially if you're going to be doing it a lot. That might be worth the investment.
Trying to get some more design into the
I'm not
scope now.
sure. Like, someone is asking if we think they'll rewrite ZBrush, like, because the UI could use work, and we know they're doing stuff for the iPad version, right? And I can't imagine that they can port anything really. I mean, sure, they might be able to port some code, but it would have to be rewritten completely for like the iPad in order for it to work. Updating the UI from that, I don't think they will. I think they'll probably keep it as close to the desktop version as possible to make it sort of like on brand. But we could hope that they would update the UI with that. But updating the desktop version of it, I don't see that coming anytime soon.
I think they would have done that if they wanted to. Like, I think there are a lot of issues with the UX, but maybe they don't agree with that. Maybe they think they've just nailed it, and if that's what they think, that's what they think, right? Then if you don't think it's an issue, then I don't think there's anything they're gonna fix with that, because they don't
And
see it as a
you can argue.
fixable
I
issue.
mean, it does work. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
people find ways around it, and that's not great user experience, but people do find ways around it.
Yeah.
Sarah's saying, I feel comfortable in ZBrush, but when I see you guys working, I realize I'm nowhere near your efficiency. Do you have a tutorial you can recommend to help me take my ZBrush workflow to a pro level? Honestly, don't be intimidated by what you see someone like us doing. We've been working with ZBrush for, I don't know, 15 years, 12, 15 years. um, it just takes time. And it is it is a confusing software, but also just the skill of sculpting is one that you're constantly developing. It's the same thing for us. We're constantly improving. We're constantly getting better, and we, we go through that stage of anxiety and depression with every single sculpt we create, where we make something and we think to ourselves, okay, I've lost the magic. I can't sculpt anymore. As for a tutorial on how to take your ZBrush workflow to a pro level, I'm not sure.
Well, I have
Do we have anything?
Yeah, if only we had a Black Friday sale, Martin, on sculpting tutorials. So yeah, what could it be? So I guess you can see this for a little bit now, but I'm showing Introduction to Anatomy here. This is 50% off right now. This is a course we came out a few months ago, where you go through all the stuff when it comes to anatomy. I think this is a good course to learn anatomy. Like obviously we go through the sculpting as well. In order to sculpt with confidence, I think it's a combination of, like, you just have to do it a lot, or you just need to practice a lot just to get comfortable. But you also just have to know kind of what's going on when it comes to the sculpting. You just have to know the concepts. So the way I kind of see it is that if your brain can work fairly, like solve the problems, then a lot of the sculpting is already being done before you put down a stroke. So a lot of the issues is, I see beginners do, they're kind of just noodling around instead of like putting down confident good strokes. And that's why I recommend like Intro to Sculpting, Intro to Anatomy. Intro to Sculpting should be down here. It's where you just get to learn a lot of these kind of things. If you don't know the anatomy here, or you don't know the sculpting, then it's going to be really hard to sculpt with confidence. I'm just going to put these guys in here. So Intro to Sculpting is what I recommend doing when it comes to just starting off. And then Intro to Anatomy, which is the second link here, is going to be the one I recommend afterwards. So Intro to Sculpting first, then Intro to Anatomy, and then we have a lot of other courses as well. And now back to the sculpting.
Reworking the layers in ZBrush, yeah, that would be nice, because they are horrible to work with. That's a good point. And someone's asking for our Discord. Give me a sec, and I will post the link.
The Discord is really nice. This is a really nice community there.
Yeah.
We're also just finishing up the art challenges now as well. Before you can check that out, like challenges.flicknormals.com. Tons of really cool entries there. Like, it's too late to enter now because the deadline was supposed to be like some hours ago, but we extended it by 48 hours. So it's too late to enter because it's just going to take too long to produce something. But it's really really cool entries there.
Unless you're crazy fast. Unless you dedicate the next 48 hours of your life to only that, then yeah.
Yeah, unless you're Rafael Grassetti, then it's too late.
Thoughts on Nomad, the sculpting app? I haven't used it. Have you used it? I
feel
like you have, right?
It's really nice. It's a really cool software. It's really really cool to see what you can do just on the iPad. Like, I don't have an iPad, my girlfriend has, so I use Nomad for a bit. It's a very affordable software, and it's just a very, very, very cool software. It's not really comparable to ZBrush yet, but I mean, it could get there. The big issue is, of course, that it's currently only on iPad. But if this was on desktop, I mean, I'm not gonna say it's game over for ZBrush, because it's not, because ZBrush has so much stuff going for it. But it would actually be a competitor in a large way, I think.
Gary the Snail says, "Hey guys, nice to see you back streaming. Also, it was nice meeting you in the airport, MJ." This is the guy I told you about, Henning.
Oh yeah,
we were in
that's
line
really cool.
For like immigration or migration or whatever, and I was like, "Yeah, that was I've never tried that before." But yeah, it was very nice to meet you too, Gary.
That's very cool. It's so weird, right? Because again, we just keep doing YouTube videos and sculpting and doing tutorials and such. It's really interesting when it actually has more for like a real world impact. I love that. So if you like ever see,
You don't always consider that there are actual people
No,
on the other side of the screen that are watching.
no.
Like we just see numbers like, oh, okay, we have some views. That's great. People are buying some products, but
Yeah.
it's always great to meet the people that consume our content and have gotten something out of it.
Yeah, if you see me on the street, you come say hi. Not that I think that's gonna happen anytime soon, but
The capitalist wants to know if he should invest in a mentorship or not. And Henning happens to run a mentorship, so he can speak to that, whether it's worth the investment or not.
yeah, let me send a link to that. It's mentorships are I find to be really, really useful. You do need to spend a lot of time on them, but if you do spend proper time on it, it's really incredible what you can actually get out of that. I've seen some of the students I've had get like improve more in like literally 3 weeks than I did in the first 3 years of sculpting. Or if you just get stuck with something, then it's really, really, really useful to do that. I don't recommend it for complete beginners, simply because then you can be spending all your time just on like just basics, right? On like ZBrush interface. That it's kind of pointless, like to do that. But if you're at a level where you've been studying for a bit, like maybe for a few years by yourself and such, then it's very useful to get somebody's opinion, because then how it works, at least the way I'm doing it, I'm not sure how other people do it, is you submit your work. It might be a model like this, and you submit it, and I'm like, all right, cool. Based on where you're currently at, let's I think this is your understanding, and let's try to improve your understanding of anatomy or design or sculpting. So yeah, I think mentorships are really useful. I wish I had that when I was learning, but depends on person to person as well. Just playing around with the designer of the character. Just I do have some reference on the left monitor now, but honestly, I'm just kind of toying with things. Don't really know where this is going to go. Maybe this is not going to be a goblin after all. Maybe it's going to be a witch or something. It's really fun when you have like a base like this, where the anatomy is, it's not like crazy solid, but it's, it's there to a degree, a foundational degree, and then you can really play around with things, and the whole thing is just going to feel pretty solid just because of that.
It kind of feels like this is one of those, I don't know what they are. One of the tellers that worked in the Bank of Gringotts
Oh
in
yeah,
Harry Potter.
yeah, the goblins
But
there.
then he
Yeah.
turned into like an MMA fighter with a super thick neck.
Yeah.
Christo was saying that he was sad that he couldn't finish his sculpt to the challenge. It's been a rough year because he broke his back, but he's progressing day by day and sculpting in ZBrush. That sounds brutal.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah,
I really hope.
I wish you the best.
Hope you're okay. That's really rough. Yeah, that's. Really hope you recover soon, and kudos on going into ZBrush sculpting with that. Can't imagine breaking your back. Jesus.
Oh, it's progressing nicely.
Yeah, the sculpt. Yeah, it's coming along. It's just toying around, really. I really don't know where I'm going with it. I'm kind of playing a little bit with slightly more stylized shapes, just making stuff a little bit curvy, playing around with some proportions here and there, and then just turning them into something more realistic at the end, maybe.
Mantis6 is asking if he should learn sculpting in Blender or push through and learn ZBrush. Well, it kind of depends on what you want to use it for. I think You can create some high quality sculpts in Blender for sure, but sculpting in Blender just doesn't come close to the fidelity you're able to create in ZBrush. So it depends on exactly what you're using it for. A lot of more stylized sculpts are, something like Blender is perfectly fine for that. But if you want to get up into the higher end of realistic sculpting, I would definitely recommend ZBrush. You're just gonna make your life so much more easier.
It's so nice to have you in the chat, Morten, for this. Just like I can focus on sculpting, because when I've been doing this before,
it sucks when you're just one.
It's so difficult because then you sculpt for like 1 minute, and you're chats, and you're constant like context switching as well. It's so difficult.
Yeah, and you get out of the flow, right? You're focusing on one thing of the character, and then you have to answer questions.
Yeah.
You get back, you're like, oh, where was I?
Yeah.
What am I doing again?
One thing I find to be really useful when it comes to sculpting here, there's more of like a general tip, is it's something I want to make a video on. We haven't really done that, but it's something I've kind of started like formalizing last few years. I call it anatomy versus design. I know there are some of the mentees here as well, and they've definitely been hearing this over and over again. Anatomy versus design is essentially like you're splitting the sculpting process into two distinct stages, where if you go back to the beginning of the stream, people can see that it's just anatomy. It's literally no design, it's just getting the anatomy right. But then if you were to make the perfect anatomy, let's say you're just making a goblin or something, just the perfect anatomy for that, it still looks really boring. But if you were to I just have the perfect design for it and no anatomy, it would look kind of cool, but it would look really wonky. Like it wouldn't feel credible at all. It would look like potato mash, but it would look like cool potato mash. But if you combine the two, so you're spending time on you don't necessarily have to do one first, you can just play around with that, but if you were to first get the anatomy right and then you do a design pass, when you do the design pass, you're only thinking about the shapes, you're only thinking about making cool shapes, and then you inevitably break the anatomy a little bit, then you go back and you fix that, and you go back to design, and you just keep doing that. And that's what I'm doing now with this guy here, because I'm going through here and just going in with some of the fat pads here, some of the breakup for the nose, and just really not caring about the design, just caring about the anatomy. I find it to be a really useful way of like constant like quality controlling my work and like feedbacking it myself, because it's so difficult to feedback your own work. But now this gives me like a little bit of a framework, not a little bit, quite a lot of framework, because this means that I can separate it out. So now I'm only focusing on appealing shapes, and then in 10 minutes I might only be focusing on origin and insertions of the sternocleidomastoid, and gradually the whole thing just gets better and better. Of course, you reach a point where this is where we hired a very talented 2D artist many years ago now, Henrik Evensen, Norwegian artist, and he had made a tutorial for us about painting, and the last stage of the painting, well, all the stages until the last was very, very structured, and the last one was just everything goes off the rails. And I just keep talking about that all the time now, where it doesn't matter how much structure you have, at some point everything goes off the rails, and that's what I'm doing as well. Anatomy versus design, start with one of them, move on to the other, and at some point it just becomes everything goes off the rails, where you're just doing a bit of everything. You don't really consider it too much as this anatomy or design or something. You just keep working on top of the whole thing.
Daniel wants to know what the synced 3D reference was, the one you were using in the beginning.
Oh yeah, this is not really publicly available, but because I've just been playing on this right now. You know, with flip normals, it's difficult because we have so many tasks. One of the things I keep more as a low intensity task for me, like if I don't have a lot of energy one day, I just I just work on this model here a little bit. So I had a little bit of time last week. So what I did is I took the flip normals anatomy bust that you can see here in the chat, and I'm basically just upgrading it. This is the bust. I'm just bringing this over to the other monitor now. This is the bust. So this one here exists as this right now. This is like available, and it's fundamentally the same. Like it's not like crazy difference, right, between what we're seeing here and what we're seeing in ZBrush. Let me see if we can get this up here. The difference is, if I just were to go in here and do a mirror, so go back here again now. So the difference you can see is just that there's a bit more detail in some of the fat pads, and this one also contains a skull. Most likely, this is going to be updated, and we're just going to upgrade or update the files in this one here. But yeah, this is the one. It's the Flipnome's anatomy bust, and it's very, very useful. I find it I built it kind of for the mentorship because I needed a way to just have my notes because there are so many anatomy models out there that they focus way too much either on only the bones or only on the muscles, and honestly, muscles are not particularly relevant when it comes to sculpting faces. One thing that is relevant, the fat pads. The fat pads are so valuable when it comes to the face. It's in large part, particularly this whole area here, is essentially a large part covered by fat. And I just needed notes for that. Same with like the nose as well. I just find it difficult to remember the different steps for it because it's broken up into like basically like 3-4 distinct regions here, like 3 for the cartilage and 1 for the bones. And I just kind of figured it was useful to just make a model that had my notes in it instead of having to have peer ref boards all the time. So that's what I'm doing, even for like this guy here now. Let me actually show you how I'm using this specifically. So now I have a nose that's crazy long, and I've been doing a bit of like design pass on this. But the problem is it becomes difficult to like refine it further without doing anatomy. So what I'll then do, like this is how I'm actually working now. I'm like going into this and looking at, okay, cool. From here, there's a point. I want to make a YouTube video on this as well. There's a point here, and from this point you can draw out 4 lines. We draw one line here, so we do that. Then we draw out another line that goes here, and this is going to go something like this. And then we draw out another line that goes here, and this separates out the nostril out. So this is going to go like this, and then we draw out a 4th line that goes here and separates out the nostril on the other side. And this is so useful because it's really difficult to figure out the separation just from memory. So I use this stuff all the time. And then of course you can separate this further out because there are more plane changes. But this is how I'm actually like working when I'm doing this kind of stuff. Like the anatomy versus design, it's so useful because now I can just go in here and be like, yeah, cool, shape here. Drag out another shape that goes over like to this area. Drag out another shape that goes to like the nostril here. And I can just like make sure the anatomy is legit. The brush I've been using as well for this whole thing is a custom brush, which maybe, hopefully, one day becomes a Flipnome's brush. I'm toying with the idea of making like a Flipnome's brush kit, where I just want to, like, the whole thing is just like a really nice texture brush. I really like it, not just for the texture, but it's such a nice brush for just like adding and removing details and refining things. So maybe this becomes a thing one day. I have to be sure that there is actually some value in this as well, and not just making a product for making a product's sake. Basically, this is how Flipnome's products in large part comes to be. It's like, Morten and I, we need something. Yeah, we find that, oh, we need this resource. All right, let's just build a basic version of it then. And then we're like, okay, this is pretty good. Let's build a more advanced version of it, and then we can turn it into a product. And I think this really helps us to be sure that the products we make are not just like, how do I put this? They're not bullshit. Like they're actually like genuinely useful products that will like can actually help people. Because if it's useful for me, like if this brush here is useful for me, it's probably useful for other people as well.
Someone's saying, I just want to say I saw your tutorials. Your tutorials been helping me a lot through the early years of me learning 3D. Thanks for everything.
Amazing.
Thank you for watching them.
Yeah, thank you so much for watching. That's awesome.
My back hurt from sculpting every day. Should I replace my weak flesh spine for titanium? Yes, definitely. Get an Apple one if you can. 2-year warranty on that. It's highly recommended.
Yeah, that's what we did. We got the Apple titanium spine. It's pretty good, but you have to replace it every 3 years as well, because the RAM of it isn't upgradable.
It runs out of power. So it might catch on fire. You never know.
But the M1 titanium spine is pretty good.
Sarah's asking, as far as portfolios go, do you think it's good to show range by displaying different styles, or is it better to stick within your own style for continuity? My art station is a little Disney-ish now. I would say it depends on what you're applying for. Like, that's if you're applying for a VFX studio, maybe try to target your work to something that would be relevant for VFX. If you're going for commercials, maybe you want to do a more varied portfolio to show that you could do multiple styles, right? If you're applying for Pixar, maybe show them that you can nail their style and show some original designs or whatever. It really depends on what you're applying for, I would say.
The perfect portfolio for one industry or one company is the worst portfolio for the other one. Like if we were to show our VFX portfolio, if we had that, if we to Disney, they wouldn't necessarily care, just because it's just a different market, different very different requirements for it. I'm not saying that you'd be completely lost, but say it would kind of be the same if you were to apply to like MPC with a very Disney portfolio. Like it just wouldn't really work because they're like, all right, cool, beautiful work, but we don't do that kind of work here. So I think it can be summed up to, yeah, it depends, which is the most annoying answer in the world to hear.
What do you guys think is the best resource for learning human anatomy and anatomy in general? Honestly, usually we talk a lot about other people's stuff when it comes to anatomy, but recently we've updated our own library. So I just added 2 courses in the chat here, which is one is the Introduction to Anatomy, which is taught by Henning, and the other one is our Fundamental Anatomy for Sculptors class, which is taught by Christian Bull, which is a more like high level, not so much ZBrush specific sculpting, but is really good for getting your solid understanding of anatomy. And combining those 2 courses, I think gets you set on the right path, especially for 3D and when it comes to sculpting.
What I learned so much from Christian's course, which I thought was amazing. I mean, I highly recommend the course. He's so good at this. What I learned from it, like one of the main things, was just how to make my sculpts look less anatomical. Like one of the things he talks about there, and I've seen it so many times, I fully agree with what he says, is that you have people who know the anatomy in and out. Like they know every single bone and muscle and all that. But then your sculpts will look just anatomical. It will look like you know it, right? Because you know that right here there is a tenon and right here there is a fascia going in there and origin insertion. Yeah, you know it's there, but it's not actually necessarily there in every single sculpt because it's just, people are so unique. So one of the things he talks about a lot is just like actually observe things. That's one of the reasons I've been really like formalizing my like anatomy versus design thing, because in the design phase, one of the things I keep doing is I'm just observing, not really like thinking about the anatomy, but just observing. I find that a lot of people, like when they start to learn anatomy, they actually get a little bit worse in sculpting because now they focus so specifically on like the rules that they know are there instead of just looking at the thing. It's really
I have not tried VR sculpting. I don't think you have either, right?
I've tried a little bit of it. Yeah, there's a Norwegian company called Codon that makes
Right.
that. Yeah, so I met with them a few times now. It's really cool stuff. It's I've only tried it for like a few hours, like when I've been at their offices and such, and it's legit really cool. It's so different than like regular sculpting, but I haven't obviously done it to like a crazy degree, right? But it's very interesting tech. It's very different. It's a very different way of working and thinking about sculpting.
Hey, Henning and Morten, what's your best belt and straps insert mesh brush? And do you have any tips on doing belts, straps, and buckles? I always find myself fiddling with those like an idiot. That is such a specific one that I don't have. I mean, in my mind, I would just probably actually just use a cylinder and do a quick bit of Z modeler on it, and then do it from there. But obviously, someone's done it in a faster way with insert mesh brushes, so I don't really have an answer for that, I'm afraid.
Yeah,
It would be, I don't know, more old school when it comes to a lot of this stuff. And I know that you can do stuff in really efficient ways in ZBrush a lot of the time, but I also feel like you can end up spending a long time trying to research. Like you're basically theory crafting how to do things the most efficient way in ZBrush instead of just doing the work. And not to say that you can't find optimal ways to do stuff if you're doing it repetitively, doing things many times, but a lot of the times I feel like just doing it actually ends up saving you time.
I find that I completely agree with that, but I find that it's not, CG is not a series of like tricks. It's not like here is the trick for how to do a belt buckle and here's a trick for how to do this and that. It's just a series of understanding like a few core tools and then building that. Like if you want to build like a belt or something, there are like 100 different ways of doing that. One of them would be to do this using ZBrush, for instance, using like the IMM and such. Disadvantage of that is, of course, that you really don't have a lot of control with that. You might have to draw it out a lot of times. You have the topology is probably going to need a lot of work. My approach would just be, just do a cylinder and then model it out like that. It also means that I can estimate my time really well because I kind of know how long polymodeling takes. But if it's something like novel that you have to figure out a whole new technique for doing something like that, it's just going to take ages to even figure that out.
Is there a go-to class for those of us, for those, I guess for those of us who are really into hard surface characters? I purchased Ben Ert's class from you guys. Ben Ert's class is good, but I would probably also say like anything Michael Pawlowicz does, there's so much stuff, so many free resources that he has on YouTube. That's like the first thing I think of when it comes to hard surface. I don't know if you have anything in mind.
Hard surface characters particularly is kinda just hard surface props but in different shapes. I would probably, because then you're not really dealing with anatomy and such to the same degree. Of course, there's some you are, but then you're dealing with like a lot of polygonal modeling techniques and different ways of doing that. So I probably would have found a really good prop tutorial just to make sure that like my technical 3D skills are up to the standard. And then I would have tried to just recreate that. Like a Transformers, right, to a large degree, is kind of just a car and arranged in different positions. It's more complicated than that, but I would have probably just found some core prop tutorials.
Here's an interesting one. Which tool do you think everyone should learn in ZBrush? I need to think on that a little bit.
Clay buildup. Just master the clay buildup brush. Just get really good at
just master the sculpt. Just master sculpting. That's
good. Easy.
Yeah, I don't know if there's like a single tool where I'm like, this is like speeds up your, I don't know, actually. Get good, maybe? That's the tool? Like just practice. I really don't know. I don't really have like a one specific tool I think everyone should learn.
Speaking of that though, of getting good, like we've been talking about this now before, there's a video I really want to do about how Dark Souls is comparable to learning CG. I think there's a lot of similarities there. And there are so many things in, like, people get stuck in Dark Souls, and the solution is actually just, you just have to get good. Like, you just need to practice more, right? You just need to learn more things. It can be a case where people are being just dicks about it, but sometimes you just have to get good. And that's the case so many times in 3D as well. Like, okay, my scope doesn't look right, my 3D model doesn't look right. How do I fix it? Look, you just got to get good. You just have to. It's basically like the annoying YouTube comment, which just is saying like it's a skill issue, and that's a large part of improving your sculpt. It's just addressing that. It's almost like if you're struggling with a boss in Souls, sometimes you you just need to like level up. You just need to level up your gear as well, and just like grind for a long time. It can be the same thing if you're struggling with really nailing the anatomy of a character. Sometimes you just have to just grind anatomy for a while, get those XP points up, and just keep doing that over and over and over again. Or it can be that like if sometimes you're stuck on a boss. I particularly had this in like Sekiro. You're fighting against Ganesh, or however you pronounce that, beyond insane boss in the beginning. But it's really a case where if you're struggling with him, that's because he's really a skill check boss. It means that if you're struggling with him, that means you don't actually understand the game. So that means if you don't understand the game, you're not really allowed to proceed. But once you do understand the game, then it goes from being impossible, like literally impossible, to just hard, to like manageable. And it's the same thing with a lot of stuff in 3D as well. Like if you really struggle with like how to create an appealing character, it might be that what you're struggling with is like understanding the game. It might just be that maybe you don't understand anatomy to a fundamental level, and then you're not allowed to pass, right? You're not allowed to make a nice anatomy model or a nice character before you understand that. But by just grinding the anatomy and figuring out like quote unquote the mechanics of the game, then you can really start to like improve your art that way. I think there are a lot of similarities between like learning anything and learning 3D, like learning a language, learning 3D, learning to play Dark Souls and 3D. A lot of the same things.
So the answer is just play more Dark Souls and you'll get good at 3D.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Yeah, that's exactly it.
Where was that question? Let me find it. I'm currently taking courses from your platform and some others. Should we handle details like pores in Substance rather than ZBrush in the game's workflow? Just finished the troll. I am a bit confused. I would say almost 100% all the time. There are, of course, cases where you could do pores in ZBrush. The problem is you have to get up to such a high poly count for it to be really effective, that like pores is something, in my opinion, that should really be handled in textures. And when you're doing it in Substance, it's also like non-destructive. It's much easier to go in and edit and tweak them compared to if you're sort of baking it into the mesh in ZBrush.
Yeah, it's very annoying if you want to balance your maps, or if you, let's say you have a model like this now and you have to continue sculpting on it and you have pores, then you have to redo your pores. The advantage, like kind of the argument for doing it in ZBrush, is that it's a lot more direct, so you can really see exactly what you're doing. You kind of know what it's going to look like before you put it into a render engine or a game engine. But like I often do it for personal work. I do it directly in ZBrush. Like we did this for the masterclass we had last year, what uses like Blender, Painter, and ZBrush. But it's a bit of a different thing, right? If you're doing something for a full production, then like for VFX, I would always do it in Mari. This was before, Painter was really viable for that. Didn't have UDIMs yet, but I would always do it in Mari. Like massively beneficial to do it in Mari. Like you were saying, right, Morten, when it comes to like the resolution issue. Like then your resolution of your pores are in no way tied to the resolution of your mesh.
Yeah, but also, like, you're kind of handicapping yourself in a way if you insist on doing those details like in full 3D. The nice thing about doing it in as a texture is that you have so much more flexibility. It's going to be way faster as well. There is, like Henning saying, an argument for doing it in 3D because you can go in, you can sculpt it, you can really push it to the next level, but you have to be working on some serious close-up shots. They have to be, you got to be flying across the pores as if they were a space landscape almost, I feel like, to justify doing it in full 3D. But the nice thing about the textures is that you can pipe that in afterwards. You can do your maps, and then you could subdivide your mesh, you could bring it into ZBrush, and then you could sort of start to upscale it from textures and then bake it into the geometry. That's another way to go about it.
Yeah, we did a video on something kind of like that for on our YouTube channel, so you can just go back, like it's about a month old or something, a bit more than that, where I'm just showing how to take how to really get cool details in ZBrush, but by doing it first in Painter, where you're projecting something in Painter first to get like the natural variety of like animal textures and animal skin and such, and then you can use ZBrush to like really enhance that. It's an incredibly powerful workflow, and that's kind of what we're talking about here. So the two work very well together as well. This brush list is
The
so
guy.
stupid. It's such
What?
the brush list here in ZBrush is so insane. Like we hit the B key, there are like hundreds of brushes and they're all stupid. Like if I wasn't doing tutorials, if I was just in full on production, I would have removed 95% of them. Can't really do it for doing tutorials because then all the hotkeys will break and all that kind of stuff. But my God, it's so unnecessary to have like
I
insert
feel like the
train
brush list in
brushes.
ZBrush is indicative of a piece of software that has basically never had competition.
Yeah.
You know, if you had competition and you were forced to really innovate, you would not be making insert train brushes.
No.
You would be focusing on other stuff. But it also, I mean, it does breed some sort of crazy creativity that you probably wouldn't see if you constantly have competition and you got to stay on top of it with pipeline and stuff. So in a way it's good, and in a way it's kind of goofy as well.
This is a weird UX choice, like, because you have like some brushes here you use all the time, and they're just randomly scattered around, like it's like a puzzle you have to solve. So it's just really difficult to come into ZBrush, and just having to learn like all these kind of things. It'd be like you come into a workshop, with like mechanical tools and such, and you're going to be using 3 tools all the time, and there were just 200 tools scattered across the room. They're like, why don't you like put them somewhere else? Nope, not gonna do that. This workshop was designed in the 90s, and this is how we've always done it. And this is how we always do it.
More questions about the split view in ZBrush. You need to explain it again.
So the split view, super handy. How it works is the current subtool is going to be on the right, and whatever else subtools are going to be on the left. And what you do, you just have to be sure that solo isn't enabled. Then you just go to transform, split screen, and go boom. There you go. So now you have your split screen like this. This is exceptionally useful for if you have like anatomy reference like this, like as a 3D model, or if you have like a scan or something, then it's a complete game changer for that. And I'm actually going to just use this for a little bit now, because as we mentioned before, anatomy versus design. Now we're going to go in here and just like enhance what I have, because it's now I've been working a little bit on the design, and it's easy to get lost in the design. So now we're going to focus on the anatomy for a little bit.
Gary's saying that he can't wait to meet you in immigration now as well.
Every time I go to Copenhagen. Nice. Well, I'm looking forward to meeting Gary in immigration as well.
Please tell me when we need to turn from Dynamesh to ZRemesher for the sculpture, and also how to merge the 2 subtools with high-level details without losing the details. Well, you can think of it like this way. Dynamesh is the step that you're using when you're creating geometry. So an easy way to think of this is like, imagine this goblin didn't have ears, you want to add ears, then you're still in the Dynamesh phase. Once that is complete, well, once the overall silhouette is there, then you can move on to ZRemesh and start subdividing. There is an argument for keeping your work longer in the Dynamesh state. If you want to work on like the eyelids, for example, you want to have the inside of the mouth, more deeper wrinkles that maybe wouldn't be as properly supported with ZRemesh, but that's the general idea that I try to work from.
I never see remesh anything until I don't go away from Dynamesh until I know the design is somehow there. What I do sometimes is that I just do a temporary ZRemesh just so I can do subdivisions. Like if I really just have to like upres this guy now, but I'm not sure if the design is approved or not, I might just do a ZRemesh, but a temporary one and reproject it, just so I have something better to work with. But in terms of topology, because this topology here can be annoying to work with, right? It's not like it's the greatest, but in general, once the design is solved, like once the main design is there, then it's ZRemesh time or retopology time.
Here's a good one. This could actually even be like a video. Robin is asking, am I a bad boy for using only base meshes? I just can't with the UVs and topology. Nope, not at all. It's not a crime to use a base mesh. Like creating something from scratch is like, I would say it depends on where you are in your 3D journey. Right in the beginning, it can be really useful, but also very challenging to create things from scratch because it gives you an idea of how to create things. As you progress, as you start to do more, I feel like you start to gain less and less from creating a base mesh every single time, creating UVs every single time. It's very rare that these days I start from scratch. I will most of the time I'll start from a base mesh just because I don't personally gain something for it. It has to be if I'm doing it for a tutorial to show someone how you would do this from start to finish. But even that, it's not indicative of how you would work in a studio, for example. You would almost never start from scratch. Like no matter how twisted the character is, there's almost always going to be some sort of base mesh that you would be starting from. So no, you are not a bad boy. You're doing fine.
Yeah, I would just caveat that with just saying that it for me it depends what you're optimizing for, because if you're optimizing for the final result, then like base mesh is all the way, right? It's so much easier to get a nice result from that. But if you want to learn as much as possible, let's say you want to learn proper anatomy, then if you start off every single sculpt with a base mesh, then it's really easy to cheat yourself out of good learning, because then a lot of the things have been solved for you. So there's like anatomy is really tricky, and if you're starting from a sphere, you get to truly see where you're currently at in terms of your sculpting level. In terms of that, there's nothing that you can't hide behind something else. But if you're starting from base mesh, it's really easy that you're kind of cheating yourself, and then you're not getting all the learning you want to. But if it's for making something that looks just awesome, like just go for it. But if you're trying to learn something, I really do recommend like not optimizing for it looking good in the end, where you're just trying to, the end of the day when it comes to that sculpt, you're just trying to learn as much as you can from it. Then you trash the sculpt and it doesn't matter. You just go like, all right, cool, I'll learn as much as I could. Then you delete the sculpt, or you don't never save the sculpt, and you just move on to the next one. I find that to be a very useful way of working.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why it's important to consider where you are in your 3D journey, because like Kenny mentioned, there are a lot of things to learn and to be gained from doing that kind of work. It's like he talked about before with the Dark Souls analogy. Sometimes you just have to sculpt. You just have to do the hard things in order to get better. So definitely don't use it as a crutch.
Yeah,
I think that would be my takeaway.
Also with the Dark Souls thing, right? Like, you know, you ideally want to be able to defeat all the bosses because you are just awesome at the game and such. But, you know, once in a while there is just a real bastard of a boss that you can't complete. You just cannot, no matter how hard you try, and you're not having fun anymore. And then you summon somebody to help you, and you do something like that, and then you can get a massive help.
Summon someone. Damn.
Yeah, I know, right? Controversial flip normal statement here, but you know, then you're like, all right, cool, this one time, you know, this was just too hard, and yeah, whatever.
That's something that I've realized ever since getting a kid, is that, you know, I used to really enjoy the kinds of games where I could spend 300 hours and just immerse myself. Now I don't have 300 hours because I have a child. So games that are like more than 25, 30 hours, it's like, okay, I gotta reprioritize stuff in order to, if I really want to play this now.
Yeah, no more 300-hour Skyrim, then I reckon.
Okay, maybe when the new Elder Scrolls comes out.
Yeah,
maybe not. Microsoft has taken over, so I don't know.
I think it's more
their track record isn't the best, so.
But I don't think that's so much their concern. The more that your kids have already moved out of your house at that point, because it's going to be such a long time.
Yeah, that's true.
There's a boss in Sekiro. That's the dumbest boss in the world. I absolutely hate it. I think it's a terrible one. I think it's called Demon of Hatred. Yeah, that's the one. Demon of Hatred. It's when you're basically at the end of the game, and there is just a huge fire boss in one of the earliest areas with the first boss fight you're fighting, and it's just a bullshit boss. But there's a way to cheese it so that he falls off the map and you still get the victory. And
Nice.
after having tried that for a while, that's how you do it. That's kind of like using a base mesh sometimes, where you're like, that's when you are a little bit of a naughty boy, that obviously you are kind of using an exploit in the game, but at the same time, you know, like, it helps you achieve the objective, which in that case is you just want to get on with your life. That's what is often like with sculpting as well, that sometimes you just can't sculpt everything by hand, or understanding something is just really difficult. So instead of spending 200 hours learning a whole new thing, you just kind of load in that model. Use that resource.
Cheesing in Souls games is definitely allowed.
I think so.
It's part, like, if they make it that hard for the player is allowed to use every exploit they can to get through the game.
I think so too. I love and I hate those games so much.
Yeah, it's weird sort of love-hate relationship. You get started, you hype every time, you know, you want to jump into it, and then after a while you're like, oh, why did I do this again?
Yeah.
Not again. But then at the same time, when you finally do kill that boss, it's like, wow. It's an amazing feeling.
But that's what I find with CG as well, because CG is so difficult. Like doing 3D to a high level is just very difficult. Doing personal work is really, really hard. And every time you finish it, you're like, oh man, I need a break now. But then you also feel really good about it, because it's so difficult to properly finish like a personal project. This requires a lot of discipline and skill and time and dedication, all that. I've been sculpting a lot without symmetry recently, and it's so much fun. And it's such a pain in the ass when you realize, oh, I want to turn this into a full project. Because then you're like, oh crap, nothing is symmetrical, asymmetrical topology, UVs, texture painting, all that.
Yeah.
Very painful.
But the character just, you know, it's a different feel
Yeah.
when you're doing it like that, which is awesome.
Yeah.
Someone's asking here, Henning, will your Intro to Mari course be like the Intro to Maya, which was awesome? And when is it going to be out?
Will it be awesome? Yes, of course it will be awesome. Yeah, it will. More serious note. Yeah, it will be the same style. The way I'm doing all the courses is one part is going to be about learning tools, and the second part is going to be about making something that looks awesome, just so that you can really combine it all into that. For the part 2, making it look awesome, we have an asset from a very talented artist, and I'm basically retexturing that. It's been a lot of stuff with different things with flip models recently when it comes to like YouTube videos and a lot of different things, so haven't had too much time for that. But I hope that like after Black Friday now and in the new year I can really go nuts on that and get that out. No idea on release for that yet. It also depends a little bit on Mari, because it's Mari 4 is coming out pretty soon, and if I start recording now Mari 7 comes out soon, and if I start to record this in like Mari 6, then I have to redo it. I don't want to do that. So a little bit on hold just because of that. It's going to be a cool course. I'm really excited about that. Like, Mari is such a cool software. It's in many ways an underrated software in a way, because it's a very VFX heavy software, right? It's used a lot in VFX. What's really cool about it is that it's node based. It's also layer based. That was how it was before, like how it used to be. But they're basically going over to the point where they're trying to make you use only nodes, and it's so powerful, because if, for instance, you create some masks, how I often start in a project is I start creating masks for the eyes, ears, mouth, ears, all that kind of stuff. And then I reuse those masks all the time. If anyone has watched one of my painter tutorials, that's how I do it, like with smart masks and such. You can just reuse them. But here you just paint one mask and you just plug it into whatever whatever channel you want. So if you want to make a quick roughness map, you can just create like a color layer and then just plug the mask into it and you have that. If you want to use it for subsurface scattering map, you have that. If you want to make the eyes red, you have that. So it's such a powerful workflow because it is node based. I love that workflow. It takes a bit more time to get used to, because nodes are inherently harder to operate than layers, I think, just because of, you know, you just have to first understand it, but then also there's more management, but you also have a lot more power in it as well. So very excited about that. Like Mari is a very, very cool software, and it has a non-commercial version as well, unlike most software. Like Nuke as well has it, and I think some more of the Foundry products have it. So you can actually use Mari while learning without having to like pay a huge amount for that. So it's very cool that you have a learning version of Mari. I think all software should have that, basically non-commercial version of it.
Yeah, agreed. Especially like because the entry, like the price point to getting into these kinds of software, it's so high. So without really having the ability to test it properly, you don't really know if it's going to be for you or if it's the tool that you need.
I have to just spend years learning it as well. And I think it's a cool way to do it, because if you're just a hobbyist, you're not gonna spend $3,000-$4,000 on like a massive tool, which some of these are.
No.
So you're just not gonna do it. So they already didn't get your money. But if you're smart about it, then you realize that some of these people, a percentage of these people, are going to become professionals. And when they become professionals, they're going to prefer your tool, and a percentage of these people are going to start their own studios, and they're going to be using that tool as a basis for their studio. So I think it's just a smart thing to do. And some of these people, like the two of us, we ended up doing YouTube tutorials, and we make tutorials on the software that we like. So if there was a software out there that was just free to use, we would be more inclined to use that. Like in this case, Blender is free, right? But when it comes to Maya, if Maya is very expensive, Maya is an expensive software, people like us would be less inclined to make tutorials using Maya.
Besides hard skills and portfolio, to enter as a junior, what would you say employees are looking for? Is it a good idea to show in my stupid chat? In my case, 3D printing page with my own projects. If it's relevant, I guess, to what you're applying for, then sure. But in terms of, pure soft skills, that's a tricky thing to bring to the table during, an interview. I mean, sure, if you're a good interviewer, that is a skill that you might have, but those soft skills are the things that tend to show up that, when you're doing something regularly at work, day after day, over the course of several months. But other than that, it's really hard to say, because it's like, what do you bring to a job interview? You bring the best version of yourself, someone that's ready to get the job done and show that you're willing to be part of the team.
Something I would say here is if you're applying for jobs, clean up your social media or turn it into private, because they are going to probably check out your social media. So I just read on Twitter, somebody else was saying this today, that I think they were a studio head, and when they were hiring, they were just looking at social media, not necessarily as a way to like catch you doing something, just to see kind of what kind of person you are, because social media is kind of a mirror to who you are to some degree. So just make sure that your social media is either super hidden and not connected to you in any way, or that at least you have some kind of professional candor, or at least when you're looking for jobs.
No, I mean, it's not a problem, I would say, to add something like, if you're passionate about 3D printing, adding that as part of your portfolio. And you could also highlight that in an interview. But obviously, if it's a studio that doesn't specialize in it, doesn't do 3D printing, you might not gain a lot from it. But it's definitely something that you can throw out there and say, if this is something you guys are thinking about looking for in the future, just know that I would, be willing to take on some responsibility when it comes to 3D printing, for example.
I think it would also show passion as well for just the subject, for the creative world as well. But ultimately, right, it's gonna be in large part down to a portfolio.
Yeah.
So tricky with the whole how do you get a job, because every single person I talk to who has a job, they kind of got a job in a different way. it's not like somebody, like everyone just got it the same way. Some people, they walked into a VFX studio in the 90s and gave a good handshake, and they were like, can you use a computer? And they're like, no. And they're like, cool, still got a job. And other people, they have and other people are some of the most talented people in the world, and they were like a student and they were really looking for employment, and there was just a recession in 2008, or like, currently, right? And you just can't get anything. It just depends so much. And sometimes people without an amazing portfolio can get a lucky break, and sometimes people with a poor or amazing portfolio can be unlucky as well. It just there's so many things that just depends on the situation. And also, like, how do I get a job? Well, it depends on the companies as well. Like, depends on who's hiring. There isn't like the job store where you go to get a job. Like, it just depends so much on like the industry, the country you're in, the customs in your country. The customs for getting a job in the UK, I'm sure, is quite different from getting a job in like Sri Lanka or like Indonesia or something. Right? It's just, there's so many cultural things there as well. It's just a very difficult thing to like give generic advice on.
Yeah.
At the core, though, it's all about being able to do something that the studio wants, the person hiring wants. Like, that's it at the end of the day. They're not just looking for good artists or good something. They have some projects that need to be done, and then they'll be hiring to get those projects done. So that's kind of the end goal, is to show that you're valuable to a team.
Someone's asking, any thoughts on the bad CGI in Marvel projects lately? I don't know about bad CGI, but because I would need some examples for that. But I'm just thinking in general, just bad Marvel projects. I think they've kind of lost focus. One thing could be that the market's been sort of oversaturated by the whole superhero genre, which is definitely a possibility. But I think they've definitely lost focus with what they were doing. The cool thing about the whole Infinity War saga and that 10-year build-up was that they had a clear goal with that. They might have a clear goal now, but it definitely doesn't feel like that anymore. It feels like they're trying out a bunch of different things. They're experimenting on a very high quality level, but a lot of the things seem to be missing.
I find that good VFX isn't necessarily always just down to the studio doing it or like the budget. It's down to like also like the vision of the director or product designer or production designers or people involved in it. You have like two very notable examples in the last few years. One of them is one that came out last year, one of my favorite movies from last year, Everything Everywhere All at Once. Beyond fantastic movie, loved it to bits, and it looks great, and it has like legit like 5 VFX artists or something. Like it's crazy. It's like it has practically like it has such like so many VFX shots, and it's so economical with how it's done. It's very, very, very smart about how they're doing VFX. They're realizing that they don't have a crazy budget for VFX, and they have to be creative with it. So that means that the directors and everyone involved, art directors, will just have to be economical about it and have a vision before you start shooting. And the second one is, I haven't seen this movie, but I've seen shots from it. Is the creator. The creator looks gorgeous, and that's ILM doing that. But it still didn't have an amazing VFX budget. It just meant that it's Gareth Edwards who did Rogue One, Like he's a very clever cookie when it comes to this stuff, and he was just able to have a grand vision for what they wanted. And if you have that, then you can be so much more effective. And the opposite of the creative and everything everywhere is Marvel, because Marvel they really don't have a grand vision when they're starting a movie in a large way. That sometimes stories are reshoots because the story isn't there, or the characters are just looking at emotional moments at green screens and they don't know what's really there. So they're not really properly planned out. I don't think it's because VFX got worse. I think it could be a combination of like lack of planning, or like lack of planning here and lack of a vision when it comes to things. But it's also not like, I think VFX in Marvel movies looks fantastic, to be honest. I really don't think it's got worse. There might just be some examples here, some shots, or maybe some movies were affected by this, but I mean, it's the same studios making essentially all the Marvel movies. So like, it's not like there is just one bad studio suddenly.
One thing I could imagine is that with the excess of shows coming out now, that budgets could be tighter and turnaround is shorter. That could definitely affect it. For like, just a personal opinion for me is that I think the one great thing that I've seen from Marvel in the past years since Infinity War sort of concluded is Loki. And I think that worked really well because, you know, it's 2 seasons, it's done, and it was written as a 2-season show. And when I finished the season there, you know, you can tell that it's designed as a 2-season show. There's no spontaneous cliffhanger because the show started getting popular or anything. It's like it's written as a 2-season show, and I think that's why it worked. VFX wise for that, I don't really have any complaints with that, but it also doesn't require a crazy ton of VFX. You know, the shots that were in there, I think they looked really good. But I think that's the only show that comes to mind, or like, that was a good Marvel show.
One thing I want to talk about in one of our videos is the whole why is Hollywood shitting on VFX so much? Like, they rely on VFX. Yeah. They're addicted to the VFX juice. Like, basically every movie, even like drama movies that you wouldn't even think about, they're filled with VFX. And they're at the same time, they're going like, my movie doesn't have VFX. Like, Ridley Scott now is basically saying that Napoleon doesn't have VFX. And
it just doesn't make sense.
No, of course
it makes literally no sense.
Yeah. It's like, it's so rude as well. It would be like, I think we talked about that, right? We're like, where do you draw the line? Do you market the movie as not being shot with cameras? It's like, it's such a weird thing. Of course, it's a vital part of the project.
Imagine the studios going out and saying, yeah, for this 3-year production, we didn't use any caters. You know, our staff just didn't eat for 3 years. It's like, why?
Yeah.
I mean, they clearly did, and they do, but why would you say that? It doesn't do anything. I'm wondering if it's because a lot of people have this, like, they're following along with this whole, like, VFX is bad and VFX is ruining movies. And so studios come out and say, well, there's no VFX in our films, so come watch it. Yeah. And people are like, yeah, great, I will support films with no VFX or something. Like, I don't know what the whole thinking here is, to be honest.
It's a funny one. Like, some years ago now, well, I guess during like COVID lockdowns when I was living in Denmark, my girlfriend and I, we had a Lord of the Rings marathon just over a few weeks, because I'm too old for marathons now, where we just watched the movies. And it's funny with the whole like, oh, why don't they make VFX that we used to? And like, the VFX in this movies isn't, how do I say this without pissing people off? It's not very good. It has some amazing shots, but it also has some really crappy shots as well. If you want to have a fun one, you should watch the Battle of Helm's Deep and just randomly pause it when they're showing like the miniature of the Helm's Deep. There are a few shots there where we just paused it randomly because we went to the toilet, came back, and like, you could clearly see that it's a miniature because there is a depth of field on it. Like, the edges of it is blurred. It would never happen if it's a real thing, right? Or if it was CG. So the whole thing looks absolutely tiny when it looked great, it works in motion, but in terms of like just the static thing, and there's fire on it, and the fire is added in CG. And there are like digital extras on top, like crowd. I'm not even sure, probably not even crowd, just like animated dudes. And one of them is standing in T-pose inside the fire. And it doesn't have textures. And that's in Lord of the Rings, in the second Lord of the Rings movie. And that's crazy. I mean, obviously that stuff happens. And nobody ever caught that. And you have to be a little bit crazy to catch that in motion, because you don't really think about that kind of stuff. But those kind of shots would never, ever, ever be approved today.
Yeah, it's odd how, it's like if you have a scale of how much you critique something, it's almost like if you have bad CG, people critique that on a scale of 1 to 10. They critique it 10. They're like, okay, it ruins the movie 10 out of 10. But if it's like bad writing, they're like, okay, that's a 5 out of 10 critique. It's like,
yeah.
Why is that? That ruins the film to a different degree. It's like it's a different thing. Why don't you critique that as much as you would bad VFX? Bad VFX that isn't supposed to be there, redundant VFX, all that stuff, that's down to the writers and the directors of the films. It's not necessarily, like nowadays, studios make really good stuff. They make really good VFX. Of course, there are bad ones out there, but oftentimes bad VFX is down to bad planning from producers on shows, directors, writers, whatever it is. Like VFX studios, they have a product they need to deliver, and they deliver on that most of the time. So I think it's kind of a silly thing, like this whole vendetta against VFX.
It's also, it allows you to do stuff you can't do without VFX. I mean, one of them is Henry Cavill with painting out his mustache, but that's like the epitome of bad planning. Like, I'm not sure if that was, it was probably because they had to do reshoots. So that means like, if they planned the script properly, they wouldn't have to do reshoots of that thing if you were to write it properly the first time.
And I was sitting behind the guy who was doing that.
Yeah.
Like doing the mouth and stuff for Henry Cavill at the time. It's like, like the plate, you're working on someone with a mustache, and it's like, it's not an easy job to fix. It's like, and it's not really their job to fix. It's down to bad planning.
Yeah, I remember we were both at DNAG and the same people working on that. Like, Jesus Christ, that's insane.
Yeah, I'm glad I didn't get that gig.
Yeah, that's it's a story for sure, but Jesus Christ.
I was 3 feet away from getting that gig. That's as close as I needed to be.
Yeah. It is interesting with like the whole bad VFX as well, because so there's somebody's complaining today about there's a new David Fincher movie called The Killer. It's on Netflix now, and there was somebody who was showing some screenshots from the movie. I think it's Michael Fassbender who was in it, and it was clearly a VFX shot, like really close up of his face. He's inside I don't know, he's driving a motorcycle or something, and they probably just using a digidouble for stunts or something. And honestly, the VFX is kind of crappy. Like the eyes are just really bad. But people were commenting on that, being like, I didn't notice that in the movie. And that's because you often don't, because you're with the thing I was talking about before, were like Helm's Deep kind of things, like it's a bad VFX. Well, if it works, right, it works. There was a VFX supervisor from ILM who was talking about that back in the day they would look at shots and try to improve the shots. But now a lot of times they're just looking at shots to find mistakes. It's almost like a game who can catch the most mistakes. And in a case like this with the motorcycle shot here, maybe it actually works in motion, right? Like it might be like 1 second and it's motion blurred and all that kind of stuff. You generally don't see it, but today it's so tempting to like bad production management of this, or bad direction, is you step frame every single thing and you're like pixel fuck it, instead of just seeing it in sequence and seeing where you can improve, how you can improve the overall product. I think it's a really important one, something we should kind of want to make a movie on, or make a video on as well at some point, is the difference between improving something versus finding mistakes. Because I've seen this so many times, like even like the thumbnail for today's video, like this guy here, this here is called Mitch McConnell, because I based it off the US like politician Mitch McConnell. It doesn't look like him anymore, but like this one here, I was working on this one and it wasn't working, and then my girlfriend came by and she just made this face and she was like, you should make this. And I was like, that's brilliant. And I took a photo of it. And it was literally like a 10-second thing. She was like, do this. And I was like, took a photo, boom, done. And I like it so much more now. But that's trying to make it better. Fixing this to our mistakes is a very, very, very big mistake here. Look at the glasses go into his head. Nobody has commented on this, right? The glasses are intersecting with his skull. So if somebody's trying to come in here with this thing here isn't working, they would just be looking at this and go, oh, you just got to fix these mistakes. So look at the hair, there are non-manifold G or bad stuff here and there. Or cool, now you fixed the mistakes. It's still not a good piece. It still doesn't work for me as an artistic piece. Or you can have somebody coming over and being like, all right, cool. This is how you make it better. And that's how you can often do it in these kind of movies as well, where instead of just looking at Michael Fassbender and being like, oh, okay, the eye textures here or the eye shape isn't working, you have to like fix this kind of stuff. Maybe it's more like, all right, this shot kind of works. Let's move on to the next sequence so we can improve that whole thing. Because if you spend time on something, that means there's something else you can't spend time on. So it's a lot about that.
And I just want to highlight the fact that right now our Black Friday sale is live. So 50% on all FlipNormals exclusives, and over 30,000 products are currently on sale on flipnormals.com. So if you're looking to pick something up, now is definitely the time. There will never be a better offer than right now.
Yeah, I'm very happy with the site now. It's so cool because in case you guys haven't checked out the site now, well, we've been rebuilding this over the last many years, and now it's finally at a stage where we're very, very happy with it, where it's fast and it's just a proper site. It does what it's supposed to.
Yeah. Also,
one of the coolest things I do is I look at products I made, like here, the skin kit, and I look at the ratings and like, oh yeah. It's really cool. Really enjoying that. I'm always wondering, when you have a product like this that's like majority 5 stars, and then you have like the 1 stars. 4 stars is fine. Like, it's 5 stars. People are really liking it. 4 stars, they're like, yeah, it's pretty good, but. And then 1 star, like, I'm genuinely wondering how that happens, because it's a weird thing that when people are doing that, it's almost like my download didn't work or something. It's almost like it's something different than just like not liking the product.
Yeah.
Always curious about how that happens or why that is.
Well, I actually have to sign off now. I need to put my daughter to bed. But this was nice. Tomorrow, Henning and I are going to be recording a few videos and hopefully stream again. We'll have to see. But this was nice, and yeah, nice to do a bit of streaming again, talking to chat and just hanging out, really.
Yeah, we're going to do an art challenge between Morten and I, and we have no idea what we're going to be doing. That's going to be revealed tomorrow to us. So
yeah, all I know is I haven't sculpted in 12 months, so that should be fun.
Yeah, I haven't sculpted in 1 second now. So
okay. Clearly, you're at a disadvantage here.
Yeah, but yeah, cool. See you tomorrow, and I'll probably gonna stay on for a little bit longer now. I'm having fun with this one, but yeah, speak soon.
Do that. All right. See you, everyone.
All right, now I have to check the chat as well. Let's see how this goes. I can't sculpt and check the chat at the same time. But yeah, I'm going to stay on for a little bit longer. I'm not actually sure how long we've been going for now. Time is weird when you are streaming. We have been going for 1 hour and 38 minutes. All right, cool. I can continue for like 20 more minutes. Trying to not keep the streams for longer than 2 hours, because then I die a little bit from that, because that is very difficult. It's really fun to do streams, but it's also very tiring as well. Like talking and sculpting at the same time, pretty hard. But yeah, I'm going to keep this going for a little bit longer. But yeah, we generally don't know what the challenge is going to be tomorrow. We that's going to be revealed, and then we're going to do versus we've been talking about like some ideas for it, but we don't know what it's going to be. And some of them have been like sculpt in ZBrush with only a mouse, or hand tied behind your back, or some kind of crazy stuff. So let's see let's see how that goes. Sculpt, we're only using a MacBook trackpad. Sculpt an elephant, but no reference allowed. We're also going to be timed. I think it's going to be like an hour long sculpt as well. I'm pretty happy with how this guy is looking now. It's, yeah, about an hour and a half, and nothing too crazy. Whenever I'm doing this, I'm just focusing on sculpting fundamentals. Just focusing on shapes, on anatomy. Just really trying to make something that works. And the way I kind of learned to sculpt this way was just to do a lot. Just drill in sculpting over and over and over again. I think we sculpt a blindfolded for the challenge. Yeah, that'd be funny. What do you think is the best way to start sculpting a head from scratch? Well, if you go back to the very beginning of the stream, you can see how I'm doing it. There are so many ways to do that, but I prefer to just get started with getting some quick bony landmarks in there, and then just refining the whole thing from there. It's a tricky one, right? To just be like, how do you get started? Because there's so many fundamental skills you have to like be concerned with and be conscious of. We have tons of this kind of stuff on our YouTube channel, of course, and like in courses like Intro to Sculpting, Intro to Anatomy. But yeah, I personally prefer to just start with a sphere and just carve out the shapes I want. But that's the most fun thing to do. That's not like the most optimal way to do it necessarily. It's so interesting when it comes to sculpting faces, how little importance there is in the actual muscles. There is, of course, some muscles you should know, particularly like this one here, the masseter muscle is really useful, and like the temple muscles here as well, really useful stuff. But like the pure facial muscles, it's just not that important. So it's a big frustration. People start to sculpt, like they're looking at the body and they're like, all right, cool, there's a muscle from here to here, and that makes sense. And then there is a and you just go from origin to insertion. Then you do the same thing for the face. You're like, all right, zygomaticus major, whatever it's called, like going here, and then you kind of just have to erase it because it's not there in any of the references. It's really difficult to work with that. That's why, like for the mentorship we were talking about earlier, I usually split it up between the body and the portrait. Basically, this stuff here, neck and down, and then neck and up, because they're so different. Like they're basically two completely different ways of approaching it. One is very logical. One is very much like logical and understanding things, like understanding anatomy, understanding how origin insertion works, understanding stretching, compression, all that. And for the face, it's on a large part down to getting a feel for it, like understanding the specific shapes of the mouth and the eyes and the nose, instead of like understanding necessarily the anatomy behind it. Because there's so many shapes that combine, so many elements like fascia and general tissue and cartilage and skin and fat and muscles and everything that end up creating the final shape, while for the body it's a lot more logical. What is it about the UV tools in Blender to make them unbearable? I've not used another program to be able to compare it. All that I hear is very clunky. I mean, that is just kind of it. The UX of the UV tools in Blender it is just clunky. We talk about this in the podcast we just did. Like, we can check this out. Like, it's something like top features in Blender 4. It's on every podcast and just on YouTube as well. And if you were to do it, for instance, in Maya, like Maya is not the greatest modeler, but it's pretty good, and they acquired a modeling tool about like 10 years ago. So UVs is pretty decent there. You can just kind of select the seams, and then you can just unfold them. Well, in Blender, it's just more complicated than that. It's very hotkey based, so you have to understand more of that. But also the unfolding algorithm isn't very good. The UV layout algorithm isn't very good. And you have to select the polygons to see the UVs in the UV space, or you can use soft sync selection, but sync selection has tons of issues. So it's just genuinely very clunky. Like, what makes it clunky? It's the whole UX. It genuinely feels like using a 15-year-old tool. It really hasn't been updated in a very, very long time. It just truly needs a proper update, not like some little fixes here and there or just some bug fixes. I think it just needs a proper update. It's a bit difficult to talk to people who's been doing it for a very long time, using Blender, only using Blender. And if you haven't experienced a good UV tool, then it's difficult to explain why the UV tools in Blender are bad. So talking to people who's been doing it for a long time, they just genuinely don't see the issue with it, because yeah, it works for them. But then you try to explain how then they have to explain to you how the tools work. One example there, for instance, would be, we talked about this in the podcast, is setting up an HDRI map in Blender. You just can't really do that without a tutorial. Like, there is no logical way you're going to figure that out. Like, again, it's not like Maya is the most intuitive UX, but you kind of figure it out. How do you make an HDRI map there? You create a dome light, and you just insert a texture there, and you can rotate it around. How do you do it in Blender? Well, you have to go into the environment, set it up there. All right, cool. You can figure that out. A little bit clunky. You have to maybe split a viewport, set up, and then change the view to the world, and then you can kind of do it there. But cool, you figured that out. How do you rotate the HDRI? It's just, you could just have to use some highly specific nodes, or you can just enable an add-on and hit a hotkey. But it's not intuitive. It's a lot of this kind of stuff in Blender, and you have this very clearly with the UV tools. If I was doing a lot of production modeling, that day to day, I don't do that anymore, but if I was doing that right now, I would most certainly be having a tool like Rism instead of the UV tools in Blender. It's just a much better tool for that. But yeah, only if I was doing this occasionally. Is Rism industry standard? Well, I don't really know what that means, to be honest, is if it's standard. It's a standalone tool. In terms of quality, absolutely. It's made by the same developer who made the Maya UV tools. Just that is better because it's more modern and it's more feature rich. So Rism is absolutely going to do the job for you. I can't think of any stronger tool than for UVs than Rism. But yeah, Maya is also pretty good. Like, the UV tools in Maya are great. I haven't really, there hasn't been a lot of stuff that I don't need. I don't need something else than Maya for it. An annoying comparison is when people are saying that, but you just need these add-ons in Blender for UV mapping, like Packmaster or whatever it's called. And that makes it better, but it's not like a fair comparison, because there are also add-ons to the UV tools in Blender, or to Maya, that makes it even better. There are some UV tools that just makes Maya absolute world-class as well. Just trying to play around a bit with the sculpt now, just seeing if I can stylize it to some degree, or just playing around with it. Don't really know exactly where I'm taking it, so it's always fun to just experiment a bit with that. Trying to maybe make some of the lines a little bit more organic, make some of the lines a bit harsher, make some areas go a bit more in, just to add some more contrast to it. find it to be sort of relaxing and soothing to sculpt like this. I mean, it's, you know, pretty intense during the stream because it's just a lot of stuff to manage. But just sculpting this, I think, is really, really, really relaxing. Just doodling around like this, putting on some good music. Real nice. Let's see here. What you can do as well when it comes to sculpts like this, you can just start sculpting from this directly, like just dynameshing it and just start sculpting directly from this. That can be quite useful as well, because then you don't have to make a base, then it's already there for you. Just gonna hide this. Just want to make sure we have some eyes in here. Eyes are so important to the character, like just with and without. It just adds like soul to it. What happened there is that I double clicked this one. Can't see it here now, but you can see the materials here. These are all messed up. Then you just double click the light and then they're back to normal. I also really recommend using some of the more default materials here, like the basic material is very good. This one here doesn't look as good, but you can see a lot more stuff in it. So I keep going back and forth between materials just because it allows you to see the model in a whole new light, like in a very literal way. Pretty harsh to look at this though, so late in the evening, so I'm gonna pick something a bit more comfortable. It can be pretty stressful for the eyes to look at something that's like too high contrasty or too bright for too long as well. Let's play around with the nose as well, see if there's something cool we can do. What I'm thinking about now is I'm trying to have some hierarchy to this, because the nose here is almost the same as his chin. So I'm trying to make the nose a bit more prominent and making his chin a little bit less. So just like so there is some like focus to it. Sarah saying, I always find retoping my relaxing. I put on an audiobook and space out. Yeah, I'm the same. I strangely enjoy retopologizing because of that, because it's just like solving a puzzle. Puzzle is not necessarily so hard, super hard, but also which is also not super easy. It's like for me, the retopology is like a good difficulty level when it comes to puzzle. I think I might continue this guy later this week. I'm enjoying it. Having a lot of fun with this guy here. What I want him to look more like this, look more downwards. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take him, just mask off this stuff here. Mask off a little bit on the other side just to blur it. Can't really blur the topology because it's dynameshed. Then that works quite well. So just trying to make him seem a bit more downwards like this. And then of course you have to move the eyes around as well, but that's okay. I was trying to make the eyes feel really sunken. Oops, there we go. Gonna do the opposite, gonna make it seem like this, so his eyes are looking down on you like this. I think it's a good idea to do like Shift R to do renders once in a while as well like this. I think it's really important. Just so you can see what he actually looks like. It's a question here. If I want to buy a Flip Normal's will work for exposure hoodie, can I buy that from Teespring? Is it still your merch? Yeah, that should work. Teespring is something we've set up ourselves, so that should work quite well. If you do, let us know, because I would love to see that on you. It's always fun to see that kind of stuff. So yeah, definitely shoot us an email or a message or Twitter or anything like that. And Also, just a reminder that we have a very nice Black Friday sale going at the moment. We have tons of exclusive tutorials, Flip Normal's exclusive tutorials, which like Introduction to Anatomy. We have face VDMs just for creating tons of faces. We have Sculpting Frankenstein's Monster. This one here is really cool. This is, I'm going to send a link to this one. This is on how to create this whole character from scratch. This is all like real time, about 21 hours, I think it is. And it just covers the whole process step by step, from like sculpting and then fine frequency details to retopology in Blender, UV mapping in Blender and Maya on ZBrush, and painting in Painter, setting up the shader and setup in Cycles, and then doing the final render in Cycles, and also doing the hair as well in Cycles. So I highly recommend this course, the Realistic Character Portrait Masterclass, if you're interested in that. All right, so I'm not going to continue this too much longer now, because I have to stop at some point. But yeah, I'm starting to enjoy where I'm taking this guy here. I think I'm going to start play a little bit more with him, just like make him a little bit more sinister, a little bit more smiley. A way you can make something feel sinister is to make them smile, but don't smile with their eyes. Because if you're smiling with your eyes, it's kind of like this, you know, you smile like this and this. Not that this is perfect, but if you want to make something feel really sinister, make them smile a lot, but make their eyes feel really sinister. Remember, when you're making something smile, you're moving flesh up here, you're moving flesh up here as well, and you're stretching different areas. So if something is stretching, that means something else is compressing. It's really important to keep in mind. The amount of volume is the same. It'd be like if you were to have a water balloon and were to squeeze that one, the water is still the same in it. The volume is still the same, but some areas of the water balloon is going to be stretched and some are going to be compressed. Yeah, I'm liking this one here now. Sometimes what I do is add a little tooth to it. So what I sometimes do here is I just do a little bit of painting. This is Epic Pen, by the way, a really cool tool. I just kind of like do a little bit of a painting thing here just to see what will work, and maybe this works. I'm gonna try it. I'm gonna try it and then see if my idea works. I'm also just gonna save my scene as well. It's sculpting for almost 2 hours and I haven't saved. Bad, Henning. Yeah, I'm gonna try to put a tooth in here. Let's do this. I'm gonna append sphere. Let's try this. And then we're gonna do this. Or I can just use, we already have from the, this is from the creature kit as well. So I already have some teeth here. This might just be what I need. Yeah, there we go. Oh, tooth. This is a really cool kit. This has like armor and ears and eyes and mouths and all that kind of stuff. So it's really useful for designing creatures. I use this all the time for creature design. Just called the Flipmo's Creature Kit. It's available on, should be 50% off. Well, it is 50% off now as well. Just put this in his face like this. Let's see how this works. And then we do a mirror weld, and there we go. And then we just have to integrate this. This may not work as well. Does the masterclass tutorial also go into the anatomy while sculpting? It does to some degree. It's not an anatomy course, but we do cover like a lot of the core sculpting, so you definitely should be able to follow along. But if you want like more anatomy, I do recommend the Introduction to Anatomy instead. Those two courses work very well together because one of them gives you, well, just a good understanding of anatomy, and the other one shows you like practically how to do something. Here I'm trying to just, I want asymmetry in the model, but I don't want asymmetry in the main model because then I have to like sculpt with asymmetry here, and that's just really annoying, at least at this point where I haven't really figured out the full design yet. So in this case, I am just kind of scaling one tooth down. That's asymmetry enough for you. You can also sometimes do this kind of stuff with, like sometimes you can add asymmetry in makeup as well. That can work quite well. So there are a lot of ways to make symmetry, like asymmetry, without actually doing asymmetry. Like particularly for production, you really want to be sure that you don't do asymmetry unnecessarily, because that is just very expensive. All right, so I'm just going to delete this tooth. I didn't really like this one, so we're just going to delete this one. And that is as far as I am going to be taking this one today. We are going to probably be doing more streaming tomorrow. If we don't do it tomorrow, we're going to be doing this another day. And yeah, tons more stuff coming from us. Be sure to check out flipnose.com. Tons of really, really cool offers at the moment, like this introduction to, well, realistic character portrait masterclass, or this anatomy bust that I've been using throughout this whole stream now. So yeah, thank you so much for stopping by, and we will see you guys soon for more Q&A and more sculpting. So really looking forward to that. All right, guys, see you soon.